Today we're going to make a one-point perspective drawing with a theme. First, let's talk about the requirements for this assignment. Grab your sketchbook to brainstorm. You'll need to have a theme with 5 related items. We'll be putting those items into separate boxes. Those boxes will need to connect to each other using an idea that fits the theme. This is a great way to flex your interpretive muscles. One of your items will need to show dominance, so when you choose your theme, think of which of those items will act as the boss of the others, and you'll put that one in a larger box. You can also choose to show dominance in other ways. Your drawing will need to demonstrate one-point perspective, and lastly, it should have a well thought out and designed background. For my example, I've decided to make my theme the human body. I'm going to take a second to think about what I'd like to include. My items will be a brain, heart, lungs, kidneys, and a stomach. To connect them all, I will use tubes to represent arteries or the circulatory system. My dominant item will be the brain, since it's the control center, and I will show its dominance by making its box larger than the others. For the background, I want to make it look like veins or tissue inside the body, where one portion looks like it's illuminated from the outside. Now that I have my idea, I'm going to sketch my layout. Normally, I like to have things lined up nicely, but I'm going to make these a little bit more uneven so the boxes look more like they're floating around on the inside. Then I'm going to decide which item will go into each box and do a rough sketch of all of them. I'll sketch out the way I plan to connect the boxes as well. Even though the requirement is to do only 5 items, I'm going to go ahead and add the large intestine because I think it would mimic the shapes in the brain nicely. Draw a small dot somewhere near the center of your paper to represent the vanishing point. It doesn't need to be perfectly centered, but make sure it isn't on the edge. Keep track of this dot. If you keep it small, you can draw it slightly darker so you don't lose it. All of those depth lines will need to line up to this point, so make sure that you remember where you decided to place it. To start, I want to make sure that when I sketch, I'm using the pencil as lightly as I possibly can. This project will involve a lot of mistakes, so you want to be able to erase easily. You'll see me make a number of mistakes myself because although I'm trained on how to do this sort of thing, I don't do it every day, and there are a lot of angles to keep track of. So make sure that you're kind to yourself and you draw lightly to allow for those mistakes. I'm first going to mark out where all my boxes will be. I'm using squares, but you can use rectangles as well if you'd like. Remember that your boxes will have frames and a background, so make sure you leave room for those things. Next, decide how thick you want the frames of your boxes and draw them. Remember, all of your lines at this point should be perfectly vertical or horizontal. I would make frames for all the boxes first, but I will use this box first to show you how to make your depth lines. I'm going to put one edge of my ruler on the corner of the box and the other on the vanishing point. Should you use the inside corner of the frame or the outside? Well, if using the outside corner will cause you to cross over the frame, don't do that. Use whichever corner will allow you to make a line without crossing through the frame. In the case of this line, it would be completely blocked by the frame, so I won't draw it at all. Next time, I'm going to draw the back of the box by connecting those lines with only horizontal and vertical lines again. For each box, the only ones that should line up to the vanishing point are the 4 lines for each box that create the depth in the corners. The front frames and the back edges should all be horizontal or vertical. What happens if you don't use the vanishing point like this? Eventually, it will look out of place as the rest of your drawing comes together and you will need to redraw it. Not the entire thing, just the messed up line. Try to avoid this mistake if you can, but more importantly, draw lightly so that when you make a mistake, you can fix it easily. You can see it's a struggle to line up the back square if you do not line up all the depth lines to the vanishing point. The back side of the box should be the same aspect ratio as the front of your box, just a smaller version. That means if the front of your box is a square, the back should be a square too. If it's a wide rectangle in the front, it should be a wide rectangle in the back, and so on and so forth. Remember, if using the inside corner of the box will cause you to cross through the frame, use the outside corner instead. Here I made a mistake. The diagonal line should have ended where the horizontal line ran into it. It's close, but not quite right. See how I checked to make sure they line up on this box? Now's a good time to make sure you're keeping your paper clean from smudges. Once you've double checked all of your boxes for accuracy, it's time to sketch your items into your boxes and then sketch in your connections. Once you're absolutely certain about all your marks, you'll trace them in thin Sharpie. We will use watercolor on these later, so we want to make sure that you're using only permanent markers, or else it will smudge when you go to paint it. Even though you're tracing lines, you still want to use a ruler when making them with the Sharpie. The longer the Sharpie sits in one place, the more likely it is to pull and will cause uneven space in your line, so use even strokes. Now that I'm ready to paint, I'm going to go into the back of the boxes where I want them to be open to the background, and I'm going to draw some temporary lines just to make sure I don't paint these by accident. Then I'm going to determine where I want the light source and draw a circle to represent it for now, so that I can consider that when deciding how dark the value of each part of the box needs to be. I will also use this when making shadows. We'll get these all painted in the next demo.